more hits we play, the more hits we get. URLradio.net. Stacey Sturm, and back in the studio with Brian Bloom and John Dwyer, Solid Rock Financial. What are we talking about now? Tax brackets, tax thresholds, taxes? Is this
Stacey, we're going to do a little conversation around
okay.
the top or the tax brackets and tax thresholds, and also understanding how taxes relate in our overall investment portfolios and where we position our assets. Because taxes can play a huge role in everything that we're doing, right? From our previous conversation around talking about Mount Everest, the climb, not always the climb, but more of the descent. And oftentimes taxes play a huge role in that because it really limits the amount of spendable income that we'll have. And so it's really critical that our clients understand the taxation piece of money. And so I want to walk you through a little history, which I call the United States government on crack. And help you understand.
How do you really feel?
And how, I'll ask you that when this conversation's over. All right, so I want to walk you through the tax history of the United States. So in 1913, the first tax was introduced as a temporary tax.
Okay.
And oh, by the way, it's still on the books as a temporary tax.
Temporary tax.
Someday to go away. Right? Yeah. Ha ha ha. Okay. Right. Okay.
So they just did they initially? I suppose they just initially put it in place as like a fundraiser.
Well,
and then they're like, "Yeah, we like this money."
It's like only one or two people.
Yeah.
And so it was a temporary tax, right? And so and the first tax rate was 7%. Now in
But it applied to only those people who earned over $500,000. Now, who in 1913 earned more than $500,000?
Boy.
There was no tax up to that point, but there were 7% after. It was a temporary thing because we needed some money.
$500,000.
So it was easy to pass because it only applied to a couple people.
Yeah, like in the entire United States.
Exactly.
Correct. Yep. So in 1913, it's a temporary tax at 7%. Now, what happened in our nation's history and the United States in 1917?
Oh, I don't know. Do you know what? There's one subject just as bad as my math, and that's my history.
Okay. So you did really well in gym. Is that what happened?
Gym and English.
Okay. So in 1917, we went to war.
Okay.
Now, what did we have to do in order to fund the war?
Well, I suppose we have to we have to probably tax people.
Right. So we had to raise taxes. Now, at that point in
That's
time,
if you want to pay for the war, which we've chosen not to for the last
this point.
20 years.
Right. Which we'll talk about. Okay.
We actually paid for things.
They actually had a plan.
Paid for them.
They had a plan back
then.
then.
So they had to pay for the war, and that in that time period, the temporary tax from 7% rose all the way to 67%.
Wow.
Now you had to be making $2 million to be in that bracket. Now again, this is just the top brackets. We're not counting all the other brackets. However, still very few people were in that bracket, but they raised the tax bracket from 7 all the way to 67. And then before the war was over, we were at a top bracket of 77%.
Wow.
Okay. Now, after the war ended, the rates dropped all the way down to 25%.
But John, go back. Go back one more year. Okay, so it was 77% on over $2 million. Or it was 67% on over $2 million. The very next year, they raised it to 77, but what did they do with the threshold? Because thresholds are what's never communicated.
And talked about, yes. So the threshold dropped from 2 million to 1 million.
Okay.
So more people were subject to this tax.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. So after the war, the tax rate went all the way down to 25%, but never to see 7% again. Why?
Right.
Because now they're hooked on the what?
On the money. They
On the
have
crack,
they have it all coming in. So now they have the money. They have the money coming in. So it, just like once prices raise, usually for gas, groceries, whatever, but it rarely goes down again. Because if you're willing to pay it, why would they charge less?
Prices have come down.
Yeah.
But nowhere near where they were years ago.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. Once they know that they can get so much money out of us, they're going to keep doing it.
Continue to do it. So in 1924, the top rate was 46%, and you'd be making $500,000.
Okay.
Right? The following year, though, in 1925, they lowered the bracket down to 25%, but they lowered the income threshold, again, going back to Brian's point, to $100,000 a year to be in the top bracket. So again, they cast a wider and bigger net to generate more revenue.
Yeah.
Right? So now in 1929 we had the market crash, and then in 1930 we had the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. Now what did we have to do? What was being promoted by the president at that time, FDR? We need to build bridges, we need to build roads, we need to get people back to work. Does that sound familiar?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So what did they need to do in order to generate all that? They had to raise what?
Taxes.
They had to raise taxes, right? And so in that part of our history, the taxes went all the way up to 63%. Now, right after that, what did our country go and get involved in?
Another war.
Yeah, World War II.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? And again, back to Brian's point, at that point in time, we were still paying for wars.
Yeah.
Right? So that bracket went all the way up to 78% to fund World War II. Wow. Now, this is what's really staggering and interesting. In 1941, the top bracket was 81%. But so you need to be making $5 million in order to be considered in that top bracket. So back then, how many were in that top bracket?
Oh, probably not many.
Like
in
two.
81, you said?
Right, Rockefeller and Chase, right? The following year, they not only raised the top bracket to 88%, they lowered the income threshold to $200,000 a year.
That was a double whammy year. Increased rate and decreased threshold.
Absolutely, right? And so it's easy to keep our focus on what is the tax rate, but to really understand the tax income threshold is critical.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right? And they just can do that because they can cast a bigger net and generate the more revenue. Now, we continue along the history of our country, and in the 1950s, what did we have? What happened? We went to what?
I'm trying to I have all music stuff in my head.
Another war. The Korean War.
Oh, yeah, the Korean War. That's right.
Okay. And so now at this point in time, we're at a 91% bracket. Now, let me back up for a minute, because in 1944, we were at a 94% tax rate.
Wow.
So when you look at where we sit, okay, we're in a very, very low rate.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So we had the Korean War, and then the rates dropped back down to around 70%, and then we had the Vietnam War, so rates spiked back up to around 77%, and then they stayed level from around 1972 all the way to 1980. Now, in 1980, who came into office?
That would be Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. And what was Reagan known for?
Being an actor.
Taxes.
He was an actor.
Taxes. Well, and it's interesting because remember when tax rates were at 94%?
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan was making the movies.
Yeah.
He would quit by July and go and work on the farm because he didn't want to keep only 6 cents of every dollar.
Right.
Right?
So he's pretty smart. Yeah.
So, but Reagan is touted for reducing taxes. All right? Which we want you to understand, though, is from his time period, in 1986, the top bracket was 50%, and the income threshold was $175,000.
So again, remember the threshold, anyone over $176,000 paid the 50%
rate.
Okay. The following year, he lowered the rate, or they lowered the rate to 38%, but now the income threshold was $90,000.
Right.
Okay.
So he reduced rates.
Yeah, so
that applied to
more people are going to
So
have
in
to pay.
effect, he raised taxes.
Yeah.
We have more tax revenue during the Reagan years than any other year, and he's known for reducing the rate, which he did. But
Boy,
the
that's
threshold,
so good.
actually, they raised more money.
And they raised more money. And the staggering statistic for me is the following year, because the year before that, where they were at a 38%, now they dropped it down all the way down to the 28% bracket. Stacy, guess what the income was to be in the top bracket at 28% in 1988?
Oh, gosh. Like 75, 50.
Okay. $30,000.
Oh!
So, Stacy, who was in the top bracket?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Well, I suppose in the 80s, but probably a good 60 to 75% of our country were in the top bracket.
It was the closest we've ever been to a flat tax. We basically only had two brackets, the 15% and the 28% bracket.
Wow.
This is an attack on the middle class.
Yeah.
And we are still there today.
Yeah, we are.
So as we go along, right, then George W. Bush said, read my lips, no more what?
No new taxes.
No new taxes. Then we went to where?
We went to war.
We went to war.
Yeah.
Okay, so the taxes raised up. George got fired. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Bill Clinton came into office.
Yes.
Right? And now here we are today at a 39% tax rate. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the last 20 years in our history, Brian alluded to this earlier, what haven't we paid for?
We still haven't paid for wars.
The wars.
anything.
Roads.
Anything.
We're like,
Okay.
how many trillions of dollars in debt? Like, this is ridiculous.
$20 trillion.
So,
And we refuse to cut spending. We just keep, yeah.
We haven't paid for wars. We haven't paid. I mean, we keep being.
Yeah.
We're told Social Security needs to be fixed.
And it's not.
Medicare needs to be shored up.
And we're adding more people.
Who's going to pay for the Zika virus cure?
Right? Oh, nobody. Nobody's going to pay for anything.
No. You are, and we are. The taxpayers are, because we're going to pay for all that by increasing taxes. If in fact those tax revenues actually get there.
Yeah.
Somehow we raise taxes, and the money never gets where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
see, and it goes to looking at, so when we asked our clients, do you believe tax rates are going to go up, down, or stay the same? They come to their own conclusions, but what you have to understand is that we're in one of the lowest brackets we've ever been in.
Yeah.
We haven't paid for anything, right, with all the debt, and they can manipulate not only the tax rate, but the tax income thresholds.
That's true.
And that's more important. And a number of years ago, one of the politicians said if we could get back to average tax rates, things would be solved in this country. Well, the average tax rate is over 58%.
Wow.
Right? So you come to your own conclusion as it relates to understanding the tax income thresholds, where you're positioning your assets as ordinary income, capital gains tax rates, right? There's areas where it might be a good accumulator, but then in distribution, because now you don't have anything to deduct because you're older, the kids are out of the house, your mortgage is usually paid off, and now you're taking money out of accounts and it hasn't been taxed yet. At what rate?
Right.
And even if the kids aren't out of the house
For the third or fourth time.
and they've returned, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean they're a deduction anymore.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Well, then you got those damn grandkids.
And they're never a deduction. And you spend a lot of money on them.
Yes, you do.
I guess you're showing your age, Brian.
Yeah, but they're great.
Right? So it's important to understand this, right?
Yeah.
And where you position your money and helping you understand, the probability of potential rates going higher.
Right.
You have got, on the way down, you have got to plan on paying as little tax as possible. That is one of the key financial concepts to getting off the mountain and home safely, is to pay as little tax as possible.
Well, and that's a goal you have with all of your clients, isn't it?
Absolutely. Because
We
it's not,
understand this.
and understanding that when we have these conversations, it has nothing to do with rate of return.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all about tax rate. Compounding taxes will always outpace compounding interest.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and frankly, where your money is, where it's at, is more important than what it earns. Because if it's in a spot where it's going to be immune from income taxes, the rate of return doesn't really matter as much.
Right.
Because if you're in a taxable situation, the rate of return, the higher the rate of return, the more the government wins.
Yeah.
Because you're their best investor.
You're losing out on your distribution.
Right.
Yeah. So it's all about understanding how this all works.
That's crazy. So if people want to give you guys a call and get some more information, possibly meet with you guys and see what you can do for them, how can they get a hold of you guys?
They can call our office at 701-223-1000, and they can either ask for myself, Brian, or Misty.
Okay. 223-1000.
Being a CPA, if they do have questions in this whole tax area, I'm glad to answer any of those, and they can get a hold of me at my email address,
Okay.
which is my first initial B, my last name Bloom, BLOOM, at theamericagroup.com.
Perfect. Thanks for coming in today, guys.
Thanks a lot for having us.